Hello, everybody. This is Richard RJ Eskow for the Zero Hour. And first of all, I acknowledge that the lighting here makes it look like I'm John Garfield in an old crime movie being interrogated by the police. I didn't do it. I tell you, I didn't do it. And speaking of interrogation and intelligence and investigation and all that stuff, obviously the big story of the day is Trump's tweet saying that Obama wiretapped him. This is more distraction on Trump's part as long as we're not talking about these stupid tweets that, 1 hour he's tweeting about the biggest scandal since Watergate, a president supposedly wiretapping a candidate from the opposite party. 2 hours later, he's tweeting about Arnold Schwarzenegger being removed from or leaving The Apprentice. I don't even care which one it is. They're arguing about that now. But I mean, that's kind of psychopathic, granted. But as long as we're talking about Trump's tweets, once again, we're not talking about his $54 billion increase to the military budget, which is insane. It's a mad giveaway to the military industry. And by the way, everybody was glad he picked Mad Dog Mattis, General Mattis, called Mad Dog, as his top military guy. But look, Mad Dog Mattis was on the board of some defense contractors too. So, everybody is making out. This is a making out administration. All the big corporations are making out. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Trump's crazy tweets again. Or if you're a Democrat, you're probably talking about Russia. And if you're talking about Russia, you're not talking about the $54 billion. You're not talking about the Immigration and Naturalization Services plan to and DNS and Border Protection and all the other agencies, their plan to separate mothers and children at the border because that kind of horrific cruelty supposedly will discourage mothers from bringing their children to this country. And by the way, when they are separated in that way, and which is a form of terrible abuse of both parties, and especially the children, they will then be housed in for-profit prison facilities, even though they committed no crime, facilities run by the for-profit industry that the federal government has once again given a green light to. But we're not talking about that either because we're talking about Russia. Now, could there be something to the connection between Trump and Russia? I've said all along, there very well could be. But the one area where there's more likely to be a smoking gun by far than anywhere else has to do not with hookers and hotels or some of the other lurid stories, but with, again, let me reiterate because I've said it before, Trump's business connections with Russia and the business connections of his Secretary of State, former CEO of ExxonMobil and others. Why did the intelligence agency report not talk about the business connections? They ignored that area altogether. Two probable reasons for that. Number one, they don't want to make the corporations uncomfortable because the intelligence agencies are part of the military industrial complex. Number two, because they use all this Russia talk as a chance to smear and demonize the left, just as they did when Russia was the lead country in the Soviet Union. So even though Russia ideologically is in no way aligned with the left, it's a right-wing dictatorial oligarchy. And the real story, if there is one, between Trump and Russia would be one of oligarchs working together against the interests of their people. But they're not going to talk about that either. No, they're going to talk about RT television. Why? Because that's a way for them to pivot to attacking the left, to saying, as the report of the Director of National Intelligence says, that, oh, Russia hacked the election by by talking about Occupy on RT, by talking about the Occupy movement, by talking about fracking on RT television, by criticizing Hillary Clinton's policies on RT television, which, by the way, I don't think they did enough of. But the fact is that once Hillary Clinton became the candidate, and virtually everyone, including most people on the left, including myself, were saying you needed to vote for her, especially if you were in a swing state. But most of the pundits on RT, even, and they're mostly liberal, but all of them, as far as I know, said vote for Hillary Clinton. So they didn't say that in the intelligence report. They implied the opposite, that somehow RT and its commentators were trying to elect Donald Trump. Now, that simply isn't so. But what they managed to say was that any kind of leftist conversation, any kind of reporting on issues that the left believes in, like fracking, the destruction of the environment, the Occupy movement, or protests in general, was a way of undermining American democracy. Of course, the Democratic Party elites grabbed that because, A, it allowed them to avoid any responsibility for their own systemic failures up and down the electoral line, and B, it allowed them a tool with which to hammer and crush the insurgent left in their own party, led by my former boss, Bernie Sanders, among others. So obviously, this is, to me anyway, this is an ideological war against the left instead of a genuine investigation into corruption in the Trump administration and Russia's role in it. And maybe that, too, is why we are not talking about the $54 billion in defense spending. Maybe that, too, is why we're not talking about coming up with a Democratic Party platform and leadership that people can get excited about, that people will vote about because it will give them better trade deals, because it will protect their jobs, because it will create jobs, because it will increase their wages. We're not talking about any of that stuff because we're being manipulated. I'm Richard R.J. Eskow for the 0 Hour.